I'm only gonna tell you this once.
That is now your chair, Captain.
My friends, the great experiment.
The greatest trick. Hidden trick.
Would you look at that?
The greatest trick.
And you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
The greatest trick.
Welcome to Greatest Trek. It's a new Star Trek podcast from the makers of The Greatest Generation. I'm Ben Harrison.
I'm Adam Pranica.
Hey, we got a guest today, Adam. A beloved guest.
I see him. I'm looking right at him. He always wears our shirt.
Yeah, he's wearing the shirt of a different show, though.
I went to podshop.biz, podshop.biz, and I ordered a Greatest Trek shirt, and that was like 2 weeks ago, and it has not arrived, sirs.
Oh, fuck!
Uh-oh.
And I wasn't going to say anything until you made a deal about it.
Well, they do print them to order, so maybe it got caught in the printer or something.
Holiday logistics, that'll happen.
Yeah,
no worries.
Yeah. You have a signature chef's knife, which I gave one of to our friend Adam here for the holidays, and you said on your podcast that it probably wouldn't arrive in time for the holidays, and it totally did. It arrived very early.
Mike is going to be super happy to hear about that.
Well, we're really excited to have you on the episode today. This is a bit of an experiment. If the experiment goes well, we will also release this as video on our YouTube channel, which I don't know if we've talked about this, Adam Pranica, very much, but we've recently begun releasing episodes of our show as YouTube files also.
Goose, our subscribers are in the hundreds. You'd be so proud of us.
Yeah.
YouTube hasn't sent us anything that's remotely like a plaque.
No.
When does that happen? When did you get your first plaque?
I got my silver one on schedule, but they never sent me the gold one. I can't imagine being the kind of person that would ask, so I don't.
You've moved around recently, though. Maybe it went to an old address.
No, that would, I went over $1 million. I was over $1 million for like a year at the old house. So yeah.
Wow.
I don't know what it was, but whatever.
This is sort of like what happened with my college diploma. It just went to my old address. Or maybe I didn't graduate and I don't know that.
It's not ever going to matter, Ben.
If it turns out that you didn't, then not only is the Uxbridge Shimoda Corporation going to fire you, but probably going to sue you for fraud, right?
Right.
We're never going to fire Ben. His key card is just going to stop working.
Right. I kind of feel like if I did try and get a job, not having graduated from college would be less of a deterrent to a potential employer than the current position I hold. So whether I'm fired or leave of my own volition, I think this is the bigger quandary.
Yeah, that's right. You two are stuck to each other like glue. No one else will have you.
Goose, you are a dear friend. We've been on your podcast a couple of times, and we're so glad that you were willing to come on ours. But you've sort of, in many ways, been on our show forever.
Forever. Because
you made the music for our shows.
It was funny. Somebody sent me an email recently, and it was real funny. She was sort of I got the sense it was like a lady about my age, our age, who said, she's listened to Uxbridge Shimoda family of product podcasts for a long time, but she's also has watched my videos for a long time, and she said you're like a. This is how she put it. Okay, she was referring to me. She said you're like a man. Like a serious man, and Adam and Ben are boys. How in the hell did you guys ever meet?
That's great. That feels good.
First thing I have to say to that person and everyone else is that as I am far more unserious than my family of products would lead people to believe. And you two are far more serious than your family of products would lead you to believe.
Thanks for saying so.
everyone know that, in fact, Ben and Adam are like two serious grown men who think very conscientiously about what they do and the things that they put into the world. They're performing when they're doing comedy podcasts. Like, that's a performance, right?
Uh-oh. Don't let that secret get out.
Well, you're not performing knowing things about music. You actually have is it a composition degree?
I have almost 2 composition degrees.
Were you ABD?
I was ABT. Well, no, actually, I got my thesis done. There was an exit exam that I just couldn't do.
I don't get this ABD, ABT industry jargon stuff. You want to back it up and tell the friends of DeSoto what that means?
ABD is all but dissertation, and it means like someone who did all of their doctoral work except for the very last phase, because often you get hung up on the dissertation for all kinds of reasons that, you know, and it's valuable information to be able to tell a prospective employer that, like, I basically did the thing. I just, you know.
Now I know why Ben knew exactly what that meant, because I feel like he's had a lot of conversations that have gone like, I've done basically what you think I'm here to do.
Yeah.
No follow-up questions.
He can never quite seal the deal, this guy.
Yeah, that's fair.
I want the people to know, which is that, like, you know, Ben's sort of like nebbishy qualities and Adam's sort of naive, innocent, you know, sort of vibe. Like, these are characters. Like, they're not.
Nope, they're real. They're real. They're real, Adam.
When did this turn into the roast of Uxbridge Shimoda?
All of us who do programming like this, like, we're playing characters that are kind of based on who we actually are, right?
Sure.
But like, Ben Harrison is not a nebbish. Like, he gets the deal sealed. Like, he's 35 feet tall. He's a snappy fucking dresser.
Don't do me. Don't do me.
Are you guys the same height?
Not at all. No, Ben could keep me in a backpack.
No. Pranica is very, very tall as well.
You're like 6'2", right, Adam?
I'm 6 on the button.
6 on the button. Wow. You really wear it like 6'2", though.
Well, if I can blow dry my hair, I'm definitely 6'2".
Yeah, look at that. Look at that coif. You got show hair today.
Getting it up.
He's got Anson's mount, doesn't he?
He really does. Yeah, I didn't even take a shower today, so I don't know why I thought this was the moment we should make our video debut.
Why is your hair wet then?
It's raining. I was outside.
Oh, that's right. It's like raining in California for the first time in 10,000 years, right?
Yeah. We're just watching it all go into the gutter on our street and then wash out into the ocean, going like, man, if only we could have anticipated this and saved this water somehow. That would have been cool.
No one built anything here thinking that it would rain for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's really the limit of home construction around here.
It really is.
So hold on. The other thing, I got to pick up that thread. So the other thing I wanted to say, because that woman asked how we met, and the thing is, I don't know.
Did we meet you for the first time at an Atlanta show, like in person?
The Goose had stayed at my apartment prior to that.
I had a live show I was doing at WNYC, and I went and stayed at Ben's house.
Oh, so you met him years before you met me.
Yeah.
In person, yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I stayed up in his little treehouse.
We were just talking about the Danger Loft on the show.
That was a really scary ladder climb to a loft. Yeah. And I generally like those kinds of things, but I was just like, I don't feel safe on this. And I'm a small person. Like,
we hot bunked in the same bed, Goose.
Oh.
When you stay at my house, you'll never get clean sheets, but you also will never get dirty sheets.
I never got sheets.
You guys had a viewer who was a submarine man and told you about like a game that they play on submarines called Hide the Shit.
Yeah, hot logging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you never know where I hid the log, Pranica.
Yeah. No, we found it when we moved out.
It was where light bulbs usually go. And the salt lamp.
Yeah, we couldn't figure out why it wouldn't turn on for weeks.
You know the greatest danger facing us is an irrational fear of the unknown.
Black alert. Black alert.
But we were going to talk about like all of the music of new Star Trek and the, like, I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about, like what the, like it's so weird to be at a time in history where they're making 5 different series concurrently, and those series all have to kind of be different things. Like they were making DS9 and TNG at the same time for a little bit, and DS9 and Voyager at the same time for a little bit. And so, they had distinct energies, but the idea of splitting it 5 different ways and having to have them all sort of feel like they are part of the same universe, but also not part of, not trying for the same thing, I guess, is what I'm going for.
Exactly. And what's tying them together? Like, who's working on all of those series?
Yeah.
It's this one guy, Jeff Russo, who's writing the music for all the new Trek.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it. And we actually got to see Jeff Russo conducting some of that at one point. I think, was that the end of season 2 that we got to see them recording Pranica?
Oh, of Star Trek Discovery. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was really cool. I mean, this was like, I mean, it kind of ruined the episode for us, but they were recording the like climactic battle sequence of the last 2 episodes of the series when we happened to get to go on the WB lot and watch this in action. And it's amazing. Like they record with a full orchestra.
Yeah. The other guy from the band Tonic done good.
Yeah, really cool guy, really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. That's that for the listeners who don't know, that's the if you could only see the way she loved me,
maybe you could understand.
Yep. It's not that guy, it's that guy's second guitar player.
Yeah.
Is Jeff Russo.
Wow. I did not bring it up, which lost a lot of bets for people when I met him.
He's got pretty eyes, though, that guy, doesn't he?
Good-looking dude.
But then this woman, Nami Melamad, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing her last name, is doing this theme for Strange New Worlds, and she collaborated with Michael Giacchino on the Prodigy theme. And she is the first woman to be a Star Trek composer, which feels pretty long overdue to me.
I see. Okay, so Jeff Russo did the theme for Strange New Worlds, but she's doing the scoring. She's doing the incidental music.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that Strange New Worlds theme might be a fun way to get into this, because it really does feel like a kind of contemporary riff on a 60s classic in a way that a lot of the others don't.
Sandy Courage set the template.
Oh, your friends?
Believe it or not, Alexander Courage, that's how his friends referred to him his entire life, was Sandy Courage.
How old do you have to be to transition into that kind of nickname? I can't wait to have an old man name. Sandy's a great one.
No time like the present, given that there's 2 Adams on the same show, so
oh, shit.
What would you like to be?
I mean, Sandy, obviously.
Okay, well, Sandy Pranica. That sounds good to me.
Adam is one of those hard to nickname names. Are there any like common truncations of Adam?
In elementary school, it's usually Adam. But other than that, yeah.
Ben and Benjamin also notoriously tricky to make, fun old man nicknames out of. But we'll try. We'll figure it out, because nobody deserves it more than me.
All right, you can be Sandy, Ben. I'll find something else.
Yeah.
So allow me to tell the listeners the tale of Sandy Courage and the original Star Trek theme that provides the template for everything.
All right, do it.
Hostess, Goose.
So Big Rod, Papa Rod, the original Rod, the biggest Rod, Gene Roddenberry wanted another fella by the name of Jerry Goldsmith to do the music for the original Star Trek.
Wow.
And Jerry Goldsmith was too busy. And so he said, hey, why don't you try my orchestrator, Sandy Courage? And if you look at Alexander Courage's like credits, the dude, does not have a lot of credits as a composer, right? Like this is the most famous thing he's famous for. The second most famous thing he did is like the score for Superman 4. And then like a bunch of TV and stuff, that's sort of forgotten, unfortunately. But like those are his composition credits. If you go over to his credits as an orchestrator, the dude like orchestrated like half of the movies you've ever heard of from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. What is
the difference? What does an orchestrator do? Is that like a dramaturg?
I have tried. There's been 8 times in my life that I've sat down and tried to understand what dramaturgy is, and I've failed each time.
Nobody knows. It's like it's like a special kind of scam. Like if you can figure out how to convince people you're a dramaturg, they'll pay you to do it.
I think where I left off with that is that it's some kind of skin procedure. No, so orchestrator versus composer. Okay, so when you're composing music for a full orchestra, you don't sit down and get a giant piece of staff paper with 66 staves on it for every single member of the orchestra and start thinking, well, let's decide what every single member of this orchestra will be doing or not doing for every second of this composition. That would be insane, right? So the very common way that it was done among classically trained people is to compose on what's called short score, or sometimes it's just called a sketch. And that's 5 staves of music usually, or thereabouts. And what you work out on those 5 staves is the bones.
Yeah.
But, so you'll make some, and then it's the kind of if you don't make any notes about instrumentation at all, it means strings.
The default is always strings.
Default is always strings. Huh. It's kind of like in organic chemistry where if you don't say what the atom is, it's carbon.
Oh, I see. Except for John Williams, the bass line is always brass, right? That's his thing.
Interesting that you bring up John Williams because he's one of the very rare composers who still does things when he's scoring films, does things the way that symphony composers would do it, which is that they work out their thing in short score and then they orchestrate it themselves. John Williams then takes his short score, goes over to a giant piece of staff paper and figures out what every single human in the orchestra is going to be doing at every second of that composition.
What a maniac.
My uncle died of auto orchestration.
Yeah, they found a bow in his ass and another bow tied around his neck and a doorknob. He just loved the feel of horsehair.
It's the only way you could blast.
Yeah. You got to rosin up that bow first. If you don't, real bad things happen. So as you can imagine, that's a tremendously laborious process. And it's one that Beethoven and Mahler and Mozart, they did that themselves because
they had the time.
They have the time, and a lot of composition happens at that stage, right? You're not just saying who gets which note. You end up writing a lot,
Yeah.
But anyway, so it takes so much fucking time. And the thing about film scoring is that the way it was conventionally done, and I think still is done mostly to this day, is that it's really the last step of the process. The edit of the picture of the movie goes into what they call picture lock, which means that they're still changing the sound mix and stuff like that, but the picture is done, right? And then it goes over to the composer, and then the composer has a matter of weeks, a couple of weeks to score the entire fucking movie. And there's not the time for one person to do that. So, somebody like Jerry Goldsmith would be, would write short scores and then pass them down to assistants to orchestrate, or maybe and now it's a whole farm system where Hans Zimmer really just goes in and sort of, writes a few theme ideas. And then he's got underlings that are turning those into actual cues and stuff like that. And part of that is because it's so easy to edit both picture and music, from what I hear, it's not so much that it's not like the old days where like the composer would get a finished movie. Like they're changing everything a lot. And so, new cues will have to get written, 6 months after the production was supposed to be done. And like Hans Zimmer is not going to do that. He's going to have an underling do that. Like their composers these days are more like project managers.
Well, it's also Hans Zimmer is an example of a composer whose name is recognizable even if you're not a huge film nerd. And it's incredibly, it has to be so difficult to reach that kind of height in that kind of job that when you hire him, you're buying the name.
The person who's lucky enough to have that name as their own name makes a shit ton of money, and all of the underlings who do the actual composing, to say nothing of the orchestrating and the arranging and all of that kind of stuff, the pay is apparently, even more miserable now than it was. Now in the streaming era, it's just apparently just horrible. No one can make a living scoring shit anymore, which is why, most productions have moved to the kind of model that you see a guy like Russo do, where like, yes, for some things, for the series finale, they'll let him bring in an orchestra, but mostly what he's doing is just like, he's got a sample library and he's, hitting keys on a keyboard to make kind of whooshy sounds and stuff like that. And I think I've even seen an interview with him where he talked about like in the early days of scoring Discovery, he hired a small orchestra so that he could assemble his own sample library. He just kind of went in there and was just like, okay, guys, I want you to go, or something like that. And he just kind of built his own library of samples.
Right. It doesn't sound like a GarageBand sample.
I was going to ask, like, was your process for making music for our shows, did it ever include paper, or was that purely a digital process for you?
Oh, I think I've worked out a few ideas on paper for you guys.
When you did the Dumps Without a Plan theme, that actually involved a real orchestra and a choir and stuff too, right?
Well, just a choir, yeah. Four boys at Mercer University.
Should we send them a check at some point? Like,
I paid the money. I paid them.
You paid them?
Yeah.
We need to reimburse you for that. I don't think we paid you.
I think it's fine. Good job, Goose.
When I first started working with you guys, I was totally broke, and I would have taken that.
Ben, I'm gonna point to the number of YouTube subscribers as a reason for how this all went down. Okay?
You're saying that we can take credit for Goose's success? I disagree.
Well, I worked with you guys before I ever did that stuff, so
Yeah. Well,
we promised exposure, and we paid an exposure.
Oh, yeah, God, I got so exposed in front of you guys.
You're the one person that exposure didn't kill.
Yeah.
So now you know what an orchestrator is. So Sandy Courage was the go-to orchestrator for like everyone in the 60s,
right.
But especially Jerry Goldsmith. And so Jerry Goldsmith couldn't do the theme for the original Star Trek, so Sandy Courage got the job, and he set the template that has been followed to some extent by everyone who came after him. I mean, some people have ventured a little bit outside of that, but like the basic template of the theme starts with like atmospheric twinkling, right? Meant to lots of silence to evoke the vastness of space, but little bell sounds and stuff that I think, whether he intended it or not, evoke
angels.
Or angels.
Yeah. The better angels of our nature.
Yes. Right on the very top of the tortoise shell.
Yeah. Is that a theremin in the TOS theme?
Oh, we'll get there. Hold on. That's because that's the next section.
Okay. All right. I don't want to jump ahead to theremin section.
First, there's the prelude, right? And like almost every Trek property has come after has had a prelude kind of like that,
right?
Where there's atmospheric twinkling, and then the single solo brass instrument of exploration comes in, right? bum, 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 that one. And I think what it sort of evokes is like, amidst the vastness comes the ship or the human soul or whatever it is, right? And so you get like you have in the original Alexander Courage one, it's a brass instrument. I think it's a horn the first time, and then it goes to a trumpet, and it's that Star Trek fanfare that we all know and love, and it's fucking classic and killer and timeless and perfect. Then comes the actual theme. Which in the case of the TOS theme by Sandy Courage is not timeless. Right? Which I'm sure sounded very cool and of the moment at the time, but
and very futuristic
very futuristic.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not just futuristic, it's also like the swinging 60s. It's the bongos that are kind of going and it to me that the awfulness of that, it sort of embodies the duality of Rod, right? The duality of Trek.
Oh God, listen to you name the episode. How dare you?
Do I get a ding? I've always wanted a ding.
It's your ding. It's your ding until someone can do better.
I got ding-a-linged. All right, let's assume that I got dinged. If not, you can cut this out. So the duality of Rod, right? Like, the best thing about Star Trek and the best thing about Rod's vision of Star Trek is it's, we take it for granted, but it really was revolutionary at the time. The optimism of Trek, the idea of that we could envision the future as something to not be scared of. And the future is a place where humanity has really figured its shit out and gotten really awesome. And that's great. The bad thing about Rod's, original vision of Trek is it's like, whose utopia is it? It's his utopia. It's like, it's a utopia where the high status white men get to be the captain of the ship and women have to be very young and have to wear short skirts and have to fetch Captain Kirk his fucking coffee, And
the amount of time they must spend on those beehive hairdos before they even get to work in the morning.
Well, hopefully you can replicate those, right? If you can beam the waste out of your alimentary canal, you can beam a beehive onto your hair, right? So anyway, like it's, so I always think that like in the Alexander Courage theme, like the opening, the prelude is everything that's good about Rod's vision. And the theme itself is Hugh Hefner in space. Right? It's the swinging 60s. It's Gene Roddenberry's utopian vision of a future was one in which he could be carrying on an intimate relationship with Nichelle Nichols and Majel Barrett at the same time, and no one would be upset about that. That's his idea of a future utopia.
That's interesting. Like, my film paper is different about what these themes mean, and I think it's not super far off from what you're saying, but like all of the themes begin so small that to me it makes me feel like the music begins as one thing or person being alone and then turns into something collaborative or together or bigger than just the sound of the one instrument or the one idea. That, and by the end we're really rocking with all the instruments.
Well, sure, it's collaborative. You've got Rod and Nichelle and Majel, like all three of them together, right? It's
oh yeah, very together.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
How bad do you think Jerry Goldsmith feels for putting Courage and Roddenberry together, given what Roddenberry did to Sandy Courage?
Yeah. Oh, you know this story? You tell the story.
Oh, well, like Jerry Goldsmith is like, thanks, but no thanks. Like, I'm Jerry Goldsmith. I got this friend, Sandy Courage. He's gonna be great. Shoves him in front of the bus that is Gene Roddenberry. Sandy Courage does the work and then gets fucked over by Roddenberry when he claimed half the royalties for the theme song to the original series after writing the lyrics.
Star Trek, Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock.
Yeah.
You nailed it, Goose.
That's not nice.
No.
Is that why the theme is the way it is, though? Like if it was just a straight like classical composition, it would have been weirder to write lyrics for.
I think that you have the film paper in your dot matrix printer right now, and you don't even realize it.
Oh boy!
my theory that I've always had is that Sandy Courage wrote that theme to be played on the theremin, because the theremin was still the hot shit sort of sci-fi. I guess this would have been right after Beach Boys' Good Vibrations hit, or right around the same time, right? Mm-hmm. And so because it sounds like a theremin melody. It's totally idiomatic for the theremin. And the thing about the theremin, though, is that it is possibly the hardest instrument to play of all of the instruments, and that's really saying something.
Even harder than trombone?
Dude, at least with a trombone, you're touching something, so you have some tactile feedback. Right. But the thing about the theremin is that it's just a radio, antenna.
I've been playing theremin champ, and it's not that hard.
Well, I mean, for people who don't know, because there's like theremin apps and stuff for your phone that you can play, and that's not the theremin. That's like a ribbon theremin, which is much easier to play. The actual theremin is just a radio antenna, and you move your hand in the vicinity of that antenna, thereby disrupting the electromagnetic field surrounding it, and that information goes to a very simple synthesizer and makes a note.
My grandpa's body was found with a theremin ribbon wrapped around his neck.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's been going around.
Very sad.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it.
Closed casket at the funeral. They just left it wrapped around, is what I'm saying.
You get close to the casket, and it's like, and then they lower him down into the dirt, and it's like,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I heard Larry David was actually at that funeral, and he looked at it, and he's like, "Is that my theremin in the casket?"
So the least surprising thing about me is that I bought a theremin in college and tried to actually learn it.
So how much time did you have to play it between all that fucking?
And the thing, not only do you get zero tactile feedback when you're trying to play actual fuck, because it's super easy to make cool sounds. You can just go, whatever. You can do interpretive dance around it, and like you'll get cool shit. But if you're trying to play actual notes, there's a great theremin player named Clara Rockmore, who is like the only great theremin player, and she sort of worked out this whole kind of technique of moving her fingers in these really specific ways to kind of control the notes. But the main problem with it is that there's nothing, you're not touching something against which you can steady your hand. Like when you play the violin is really fucking hard, but like at least you're pressing your finger against a board of wood and you can stabilize yourself against it. Whereas like when your hands are just floating in the air, it's fucking impossible, So theremin was like really big as a soundtrack instrument, but there were like 2 guys in LA who could play it. And my theory is that they just couldn't get one of those guys on the day. And so they brought in a lady to sing the theremin part instead. And she goes, woo, right?
Wait, so that's not actually a theremin?
No, that is a lady.
I'm learning that in the moment. Amazing.
Well, it's a new ship. You treat her like a lady. You treat her like a lady. She'll always bring you home.
I think the thing that is most remarkable about that stuff after the single brass instrument is how little impact it had on the rest of Star Trek and how much because the stuff that they're composing now is super cinematic and scopy and bombastic, and maybe we will remember it as being corny, but like the Next Generation theme we don't. You know, the Next Generation theme is just a film score level. I mean, I guess they used it from recycled it from one of the films, but like
So that's the thing, because they finally got Jerry Goldsmith, who was who they wanted in the first place, and he did the score for the motion picture.
Can you imagine Jerry Goldsmith taking that meeting and being like, "You're not going to fuck me over like Sandy, right? I know how you are, Star Trek Industrial Complex.
Yeah.
You'll find in my contract that none of my music will ever have lyrics. You understand?"
Don't ever fuck me, Rod. Don't ever fuck me. You don't fuck me like Sandy.
Yeah, but like up through Voyager, like we got Star Trek themes that are without corn, and then you know they went back to the corn for Enterprise, but like, but a whole different like species of corn, you know.
So before we say anything bad about Faith of the Heart,
I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just saying it's not a classical like motion picture theme.
Yes. I mean, I want to say two nice things. One is that it was a bold choice on the part of the producers to be like, let's, instead of having an incredibly grand, brass instrument of exploration kind of situation like we've always done, and the themes for Voyager and DS9 are gorgeous, right? I mean, those are both absolutely gorgeous brass instrument of heroism sort of situations, and it was very bold of the producers to be like, let's do a pop song for the theme to Enterprise. So that's the one nice thing I want to say. The other nice thing I want to say is that song, it's by
Diane Warren.
Diane Warren, who is like,
she's on the Mount Musicmore of all of music. One
of the greatest professional songwriters of all time, and she's still at it today.
They didn't go to the wrong person.
Well, it already existed, that song. That had already been a minor hit for Rod Stewart. And for the movie Patch Adams.
Are you kidding?
That's where I remember it.
Yeah, that's where it's from. And this is right around the time that like Diane Warren wrote the Aerosmith song for one of those 90s asteroid films. I don't remember which it was.
Don't want to miss a thing.
Yeah, I don't want to close my eyes. I don't want to fall asleep because I missed you, baby. That's Diane Warren. Like, she's and all the Tony Braxton songs, and she's a fucking beast, and she's someone who like works, right? She writes dozens of songs a year to this day, publishes dozens of songs a year to this day, and they're not all going to be winners. And Faith of the Heart isn't even like, it's a minor win, it's a bit of a win. The main problem with it is that I feel like they couldn't afford Rod Stewart, obviously, and you can't have two Rods in one situation anyway.
Unless you're a Klingon. How would we think of it differently if it were the Rod Stewart version?
I think so, because the guy they got, I think they were kind of like, we need a man with a raspy voice because it's Rod Stewart. So they got this guy who sounds like he's singing like a Whitesnake ballad, like a power ballad from the mid to late 80s, which was 15 years ago.
It sounds like it's Dan Hill singing It's a Long Road from the end of First Blood. Like it's that kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, wow, I never made the connection, but that's like, is it actually the same guy? It might be, I don't know. But it's like, it sounds passé to, it's not just that it sounds passé to us now. I mean, that series came out in like 2001 or something? Like that voice was 15 years too late.
Yeah, it really was. It would have been like hiring Jimmy Jameson to do the theme for Disco.
Though, God, I would pay some of my meager fortune to hear that right now.
I think that the thing about all of the new themes is that they're all like really distinct, and I really like all of them. Like I think they all really hit for me. And that seems like a magic trick all by itself. The fact that they took 5 series and made 5 really quite distinct theme songs. Like I guess you could make the case that there's some DNA in common between like the disco, like the Jeff Russo ones sound like Jeff Russo music, I guess you could say. But I mean, I guess that's something you could say about any composer that's worked upon across multiple films or television shows.
I think all of them sort of, they all capture, they've definitely all very intentionally tried to capture the atmospherics of the Alexander Courage prelude, right? Like that's their jumping off point, right? And that's awesome. And then once you get into the actual theme, I think they all the new Trek themes swing on the same axis on which Trek themes have always swung, which is between heroism and mystery. And maybe when the needle gets really, really far on the side of mystery, it tips into, danger, hazard, a nervousness that you really hear in, for example, the theme to Undiscovered Country, right?
Sure.
Which is, a totally different theme. Like there's a menace to it.
I think that the Picard theme has a lot of menace to it as well. Mm-hmm. And, like we have talked about how dark that show is compared to TNG and kind of a surprising way. Like it's almost a retcon of the character. Like, let's take the character that isn't haunted and make him haunted and make him, put him in situations where he's like fighting the demons of the past. So the theme is super different to accommodate for that, I guess.
But I still like it because I feel like it's still on the core spectrum, right? It's got the spacey atmospherics, and it's still it's mystery verging on menace, right? But it still evokes the kind of the mystery, the fascination of the unknown, of the vastness of space, which is great,
I'm really impressed with how the Lower Deck score, like the score for a comedy series, sounds so seriously like a Star Trek theme without feeling like it's explicitly derivative or a send-up.
That's part of the joke. That's what makes the comedy land. That's part of the joke, right? It's that it's like...
how serious it takes it, yeah. I definitely get that, but I think part of its magic is that, like, I don't know, I really like the Chris Westlake work in all of Lower Decks, especially in the parts when it intends to be serious. Like, when it's not a comedy show, it sounds like as hardcore Star Trek as any series or movie.
Do you guys think have the kind of feeling that I have, that maybe Lower Decks is like the best of the new Trek? I kind of feel like Lower Decks is the best of the new Trek.
I'm not here to call anything the best, but it is it's definitely one of my favorite shows.
It's so smart to take the music really seriously also, because I think that, in less capable hands, this is a comedy show, and like in hands that are maybe less confident in standing up to the pressures of, suits and stuff. Like, I'm sure that there have been conversations, higher up at Paramount, like, if we're going to be doing something like Lower Decks, shouldn't it be like very nakedly just a silly show and not in canon, like, yeah. I mean, who knows how much suits care about canon or not, but like, I think that, the fact that the people making Lower Decks really care about Star Trek comes through. Like, the Star Trek is only the butt of the joke when it's the kind of joke that we all love to make about Star Trek.
Well, it kind of reminds me of when I brought those 4 boys into my office at Mercer to sing stupid words to...
You keep saying that, and it sounds worse and worse every time.
It does. When I paid them their $200 cash to each to come into my office for an hour and sing stupid words to an absolutely grand, gorgeous piece of music, which was the theme to Red October by, what's his name with the Greek name? Basil Palladouris, is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
But who, by the way, played a fucking red shirt in a TOS episode when he was a younger man.
Pretty awesome.
So therefore, Hunt for Red October is canonical Trek. But anyways, like when I brought these guys in to sort of sing these stupid words to this grand piece of music, they were like, how do you want us to like play this? Should we be silly? And I was like, no, the joke is going to be if you make it sound grand, you know, that's what's going to make it funny. Like do it the way that you would do it if it was Mahler, you know?
Yeah.
That's a bad example because Mahler didn't write choral music. Do it the way that you would do it if it was Wagner, you know? And they did, and it was funny, you know, and I think that's the same approach they take to Lower Decks, is make it, you know, you make everything about it like real Trek except for the jokes.
Well, in so many ways, like whether it's music or it's in dialogue or in whatever, like don't tell me how to feel is a quality of great work. And Lower Decks as a musical composition is very much about that in a way that the moments in Discovery that don't hit as hard for me is when the music and the dialogue and everything is telling me how to feel.
I suffer from the disease of not knowing what to feel a lot of the time. So I sometimes appreciate it.
He's a robot.
Yeah, a little bit.
Can I just shoehorn in like my favorite anecdote about Star Trek music of all?
Please do.
It's the greatest thing ever. Okay, so you'll recall that in Jerry Goldsmith's score for Star Trek the Motion Picture, the leitmotif for V'ger is like a sort of like a sound effect kind of thing. It's like a thing, an instrument that goes, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So the byong sound is a piece of, is a sort of a novel instrument that was invented by a gentleman named Craig Huxley, who was a jazz pianist in LA who as a boy had been a child actor and had played Captain Kirk's fucking nephew in the TOS episode Operation Annihilate. That's Craig Huxley. Yeah. That little boy grows up to be Craig Huxley, the jazz pianist who invents an electronic instrument that he called the blaster beam. That's basically like, it's this incredibly long aluminum casing with a bunch of steel wires inside it that you can smack or pluck or apparently they used to hit it with a
slap or tickle.
No, like a fucking like a shell, like a piece of ordnance, right?
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then he basically just wired a bunch of guitar pickups through this aluminum casing, and you could sort of slide them around in order to change the sound, and it's this really distinctive sound that was the voice of V'ger and ended up being used on James Horner's score a little bit for Wrath of Khan. By the time they came down to do Wrath of Khan, they did not have the money for Jerry Goldsmith anymore, and so they had to go to. That was James Horner's breakout gig. He was 28 years old when he wrote that. He had done nothing before.
How big was that instrument, do you think? Like, could you put it in the bed of a pickup truck, or
No. It goes from one end of the stage to another.
That's amazing.
I Google image search that you do have to take off safe search to get an image of it.
There you go. So the thing about the blaster beam is that there are several published accounts of women being sexually stimulated by it.
No way.
All right. Good vibrations are one of the things that it produces, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Including apparently like a mass instance of this where the instrument was being played at an outdoor concert in Central Park in the 1990 or something, where several women reported similar symptoms, shall we say.
A lot of very confused husbands.
We got to go to more concerts.
I'll have what she's having.
Yeah.
I ran it by my lovely lady earlier today, and she was quite skeptical that there is a resonant frequency that really rattles the little man in the boat. But so I'm going to say it's bullshit, but it's a funny story. And I felt like if there's any venue for that story, it's the Uxbridge Shimoda family of podcasts.
Well, I've got great news for you, Goose. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page for the blaster beam right now, and a radio station called Tusser FM 107.3 in Australia conducted an experiment where they played a continuous loop of blaster beam performance and asked their female listeners to call in and report any stimulation they experienced. And stimulation is linked to the Wikipedia article for sexual stimulation.
That link's already been clicked on your computer, right, Ben?
Well, yeah, that one's purple already. On this occasion, none of the show's listeners reported any arousal
That's
whatsoever.
not going to do it. A radio cannot produce the low frequencies necessary that could conceivably produce the intended result.
You never rode around in cars when I was in high school, Goose. That was the case. Get a couple of JL bazooka subs in the back of a pickup truck.
That'd do it.
She'll always bring it home.
One thing I wanted to bring up, that this is kind of a left turn here, is the 2009 Star Trek theme, which I feel like is a great theme. It's one of my favorite Star Trek themes, but it also hasn't really had the same staying power as some of the others. Like, we hear some of the, melodic, sequences from DS9, Voyager, TNG reused in a lot of the modern series. And obviously TOS stuff, it gets reused all the time. But I don't hear that 2009 Star Trek theme come up that much anymore.
Are you talking about what plays over the credits or some other part of that movie where the credits theme, I guess, is what I'm thinking of specifically.
How do you say his name? Michael Giacchino? Is that how you say his name, the composer of that?
You're the guy with Italian heritage, man.
So he had gotten his big break is that he scored the series Lost. And that's how he worked with, because J.J. Abrams was that Lost, was that didn't he make that show? Or
J.J. Abrams did make Lost.
Yeah, okay. So that first film was it called Into Darkness? Is that what that was?
Just Star Trek is what it was called.
Yeah, you often see it styled as Star Trek 2009 these days.
Got it. So I went to go see that movie, even though I had deep misgivings about it that were justified by the watching of the film. I hate those movies.
Whoa!
Oh, I hate them. Oh my God. Oh,
spicy.
Awful. But I was like, what I was really curious about is I was like, I heard that Michael Giacchino had scored it, and all I had heard of Michael Giacchino was Lost, and I was curious, does this guy know how to write actual like music, right? Like, or does like I mean like a theme with like notes as opposed to kind of making sound effects with the orchestra.
I'm shocked that you would question that after watching Lost for all those seasons, because I watched every episode of Lost, and there was no doubt in my mind that he was capable of what he did in the Star Trek films, and I thought he did a great job on them.
You're a much better person than I am, but yeah, I was fucking blown away. I was like, that theme is. I didn't like it because it sort of, again, it teetered beyond evoking mystery and into danger and hazard, which is not what I come to Star Trek for, right? And why I ultimately did not like those movies is they're just fucking action movies, which it's like, if you just want to watch an action movie, watch something good. Don't watch fucking Star Trek, right? Like, I come to Star Trek for TNG, a whole bunch of people sitting around a fucking conference table, working out a complex problem.
I want irritated diplomats, all right?
I think Birth of James Kirk in that cold open is one of the best 8 minutes that Star Trek has ever made across its entire franchise. And I think Michael Giacchino's work is a big reason for that.
They're fun action movies, and Giacchino's score is...
I think it's pronounced Gabagool.
Michael Capicola's score is hot shit. It's really great, but...
I hope you love interviewing the likes of Ragusea forever, Ben, because we're never going to get anyone who works in Star Trek after this. I wanted to get this question answered from all of us, because I think this is like what most viewers would probably want to know, but like, across all of the Star Trek series and movies, what is your favorite piece of Star Trek music, or your favorite movie score, or your moment that involved music?
Absolutely nothing beats Jerry Goldsmith's theme from the motion picture that became the theme to TNG. There's a reason that Daddy Rod resurrected that when he started his new TV series. That's the very best theme that has ever been written for Trek. And I'm not saying it's the best music that's ever been written for Trek. I mean the best theme. That is like a highly identifiable, singable, melodic idea, right? I think there's individual cues that have been awesome across the franchise in so many places. One that comes to mind is in the TNG movie, the first TNG movie. What's that one called? Generations, right? The cue that is in when Picard ends up in the Matrix, and
that's where he is.
That creepy Victorian Christmas girl. Yeah. It's like, I love my dolly, Grandpa, or whatever. Like,
bend my spoon, Grandpa. No!
Oh, shit. It's not called the Matrix, is it? What the fuck is it called?
It's the Nexus.
The Nexus, okay.
You could be forgiven for confusing the two.
There's a cue in the Nexus when Picard is living his best life in a creepy Victorian Christmas tableau, and that cue is gorgeous. And I remember, I forget who the composer was on that, but I read an interview where he said that was the best cue he'd ever written. He thought, and I had,
Dennis McCarthy did the music for.
Oh, okay, yeah, nice, nailed it.
I think I agree with you that TNG is the best theme. I do want to give a special citation to that orchestral hit in the DS9 theme when the space station first appears on screen.
Oh, fucking A, man.
That gave me goosebumps the first time I saw it. I remember it really vividly watching the new Star Trek show and just feeling like we are in for something actually good at this point,
And what's funny is that like that I associate that family of themes. Like, so there's the one that Goldsmith wrote for the motion picture, and then the themes for DS9 and Voyager were obviously composed in that mold, right?
Right.
And I think of those themes as sounding heroic. But what Jerry Goldsmith was thinking when he wrote it is what Rod told him was that this is a Western in space. I want you to write a Western theme, right? And that's even more so the case with DS9, because DS9 was like them getting back to the idea of a Western in space. It's a border town,
Right.
It's a gritty border town. And I guess I haven't watched like the great Hollywood Westerns to know what that vocabulary is. Because the only Western music I think of is like Ennio Morricone, because that's all just such great fucking music. And that's not the same kind of thing. It's not heroic.
I think it's Ennio Gabagool, technically.
Yeah. We got one for theme to the motion picture / Star Trek The Next Generation. We got one for the moment the station is revealed in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. How about you?
I don't even know if mine counts, but like one of my core musical memories where like it sounds super cheesy, but like I felt the power of music for the very first time was being in a concert band playing wind instruments, and we got to play Holst's The Planets. And I'd never felt what being in a band like at full power felt like before until I got to sit there and play that music. And hearing that in Star Trek VI makes that film score really meaningful and powerful to me. And it's like a riff. It's not directly Holst the Planets, but I'll never forget the first time sitting in a theater watching that movie. And it's an entire story during the credits before Praxis explodes. Like, I'm getting chills like even thinking about it and talking about it, because you go through the entire story arc in melody before seeing the movie, and then we're in the movie and we get to re-experience that for the next 2 hours. I think like that's the power of music to me, and that's why that's my favorite score. It's like the movie's talking dirty to you. It's like telling you what it's going to do to you, and then it does it to you. I love that score so much, and that's part of what makes that movie so rewatchable to me. I just love it. Yeah.
But don't forget that the only Trek cue that has ever been alleged to bring ladies to climax is V'ger's Bwong.
I know. V'ger's Bwong is a piece of glassware I think I'm going to look for out on Melrose.
That needs to be some kind of merch at podshop.biz is V'ger's Bwong.
Yeah, can we legally ship a Bwong across state lines?
Sure, it's just for incense, Ben. You can smoke tobacco out of it.
All right, well, we'll have to look into that. See if our print-on-demand service has anything appropriate.
Yeah, it'll get to you in 6 months, Goose.
Hey, I don't need it, okay? All right, I don't need it. Some people might need it, but I don't need it. All right, I get the job done.
Well, should we wrap this up? I mean, this has been a very loose, extemporaneous conversation, but I don't know. Any final thoughts you want to share about Star Trek music, Adam Ragusea?
It's been a lot of fun making the things that you've asked me to make for you, and to work in little things that are kind of references to real Trek music, and at the same time real references to Dark Materia's Picard song theme, which is sort of the jumping off point for everything that we do together. Yeah, and so it's so. I mean, if it was important enough for someone to write a film paper about it, you could talk about intertextuality until the cows come home, looking at a theme like the original Discovery podcast theme that I wrote for you guys, that contains lots of references to Trek things, but also references to how Dark Materia interpolated Trek things.
Right.
And that was all a ton of fun.
And largely built just out of the trailer for Discovery, which was that was the material we had at the time that you made that theme.
That was a tricky job. That was not one of the easiest ones. But there's just simpler things like the little bed that I wrote for you guys for when you open up mail and somebody glitter bombs you. What do we call that one? The Picard Code 47, is that we call that one?
Yeah.
I was just so down and getting a real kick out of writing that little part for you guys, and being really appreciative that I could do this with you guys and have the fun that we get to have together.
Man,
we really appreciate our relationship with you, man. You make our show better, you make our comedy better, and it's just great to be friends with you.
You make me better in the kitchen. I've learned so much from your shows, and I'm so glad you're doing the podcast now, because I think Adam and I are both weekly listeners of that. And
oh, you're the two.
They should send us a plaque, Ben.
Yeah, I only season my cutting board now. That's the law in our house. Thank you so much for being on the show. How do people find what you do? I mean, this may be going out on YouTube, but it may also just be in our podcast feed, depending on acts and whether or not they get together.
If you go into the podcatcher on which you are listening to this program, this fine program, you can simply search my name, which is Adam Gabagool. Which is spelled Ragusea, Ragusea, but it's pronounced Gabagool. And you can do the same on YouTube. My podcast also posts to YouTube on Mondays, and then on Thursdays I do a video, which is sometimes just a recipe, but it's also sometimes some other kind of video about food, usually sort of a science-y or historical explainer sort of thing. And if you don't like any of my videography, you can blame Adam and Ben, because I was a fucking public radio reporter when I fell bass backwards into YouTube stardom, and
I think you turned out okay, Goose.
I called you, Adam, and I was just like, I don't understand white balance. Why does the color keep changing?
When people have questions about white balance, they come to me.
Adam White Balance Pranica. Goose, it's been so fun having you on the show. I hope we can have you again sometime soon. With that, I think we need to move on and check our Priority 1 inbox. So we'll say bye-bye to you and bye-bye to the viewers on YouTube, and go do that now.